Welcome to Comic Book Corner, as presented by Boom, Cabin Fever Radio. I am Bobby Smith, and I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Comic Book Corner. I am Bobby Smith. I will navigate the world of comic books and present extended runs on Comic Book Corner from some of the best titles, past and present, in the comic book world that may deserve your attention. Thank you for joining me. What do you think about the new look and feel here? Probably have a little bit of an issue going back here, but we'll get it all worked out. Right now, what you're looking at today is the part of the gatefold from. I was trying to compensate from Mike Perkins on the stand. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. Thanks for joining me again. Today, we're going to be discussing Stephen King's The Stand from Marvel Comics by Roberto Seguira Acasa and Mike Perkins. Before we get started, I want to thank one of the best comic stores ever, Galaxy of Comics, on Satakoy Street in Van Nuys, just for being a great comic store, making sure that we've been able to still get our books throughout the whole crisis, and now even resetting up their whole store to allow folks to come back in and browse. I'll come back in a bit and tell you more about Galaxy of Comics later in the show. About me, I've been reading comic books since I was a little kid, almost my whole life. Sometimes I even joke that Spider-Man taught me how to read at the age of 4. Currently, I live in Los Angeles, California. I make movies, TV shows, short videos, writing, directing, even acting. I've already produced a few short comics, and I'm currently working on more. As we've been encouraged to stay at home since mid-March, I've been I've been delivering regular live stream shows. Wild Love Weekly, which I produce live on Fridays at 3 p.m. Also Cabin Fever Radio Novellas, where I, along with a group of dedicated actors, perform dramatic readings of your favorite TV shows and movies from yesterday and today. In fact, we just wrapped up 4 weeks on an original script for a blood-soaked, weird Western with 3 of the most badass female leads you've ever seen, called Vengeance Turns. You guys may see a comic involving Vengeance Turns really soon. Anyway, wherever you found me today, wherever you found me right now, you can find me there on Fridays for Wild Love Weekly and on Saturdays for Cabin Fever Radio Novellas too. The easiest thing to do is just follow our page on Facebook at Cabin Fever Radio. So you can follow Cabin Fever Radio on Facebook, but you can also keep up with us on Instagram, and we have a Patreon page to maintain a kind of a constant connection with our fans. Visit cabinfeverradio.com for more information and for lots of content, including coloring pages. Cabin Fever Radio is basically, we have a mission to bring you the best in original, new, live stream entertainment in a variety of formats. Obviously, we have this, Comic Book Corner, as my review show for comics. I will occasionally discuss other related properties from movies and TV shows and even my beloved coloring books. I'm also going to be doing semi-regular interviews with comic book creators. You may have seen my first a few weeks ago. It was with one of my very favorite indie creators, fellow Kentuckian Kurt Belcher. And I'm very excited to announce that I will be chatting with the legendary John McCrea, who has tackled characters from Judge Dredd to Spider-Man, but is most revered by me for Hitman, which he created with Garth Ennis in the late 90s. His most recent creation, Dead Eyes, is among my current favorites, and it's a collaboration with Jerry Dugan from Image Comics. You may remember me covering Dead Eyes just about a month ago. I love this book. And we'll be giving away a copy of this book next week when I interview John McCrea. So make sure that you tune in for that. For now, though, what I want to talk about is this big bad boy right here. Check that out. Completely badass stuff right there. And that's, of course, what you're seeing back there as well. Ugh, how can I fix this? All right. But let's start way before The Stand. And let's just talk about Stephen King for a second. I have been reading since I was 4 years old. And I've been reading novels in longer form since I was about 10 or 11, starting with Salem's Lot. I remember seeing the TV miniseries Salem's Lot when it came out in 1979 with Hutch, David Soul from Starsky and Hutch, a very popular buddy cop TV show at that time. The movie, this miniseries movie, it scared the shit out of me. It also got me obsessed with vampires, the scary Nosferatu kind, not the shiny disco Twilight types. And Salem's Lot also got me hooked on the writing of one Mr. Stephen King. I was in a bookstore one day with my mom after I'd seen Salem's Lot, and I saw the book on display, and it probably had one of those "as seen on TV" banners emblazoned across it. I don't remember, but that would make sense. But Salem's Lot by Stephen King, and man, I had to have it. My mom was like, "Read?" Don't forget, I grew up in Kentucky, and people there don't exactly look at reading as something you do for fun for the most part. But I begged her. I got the book, and a lifelong relationship with Stephen King was born. I guess looking back now at the age of 51, that I truly am a lifelong horror fan and a lifelong Stephen King reader and fan. For years and years after Salem's Lot, I mowed through his early collection, Carrie, Cujo, you name it, all that early stuff. And when stuff like Pet Sematary was coming out new, I was always there at the store with my allowance money, ready to plunk it down, and dive into the next and the next and the next and the next. The only one I never dove into back then was The Stand. Even as much as I loved reading, its sheer thickness at like 800 something pages intimidated my young brain. In fact, the only reason I read his novel It, which came in at like 1100 something pages, was because I was already deeply into my love with Stephen King, my obsession with his writing, and I had gotten it for Christmas that the year that it came out in hardback. But I do think that my love for that book, as long as it was a factor that led me back to The Stand. Eventually, a few things happened before I made my way back to The Stand as a novel, though. My love for reading and my love for comics developed like vines twisting around each other, and I spent more time collecting and reading comics throughout my early preteen and teenage years. As I grew up and I recognized my love for reading, and comics honestly were one medium that continually exposed me to new genres, I began to expand my palette in reading. And at first, it was just over to other horror writers like Clive Barker, who created Hellraiser. But he and his work are the subject of a whole other discussion altogether. Stephen King also continued to develop and evolve as a writer. And for just a few short years in my ultra rebellious late teens, I kind of felt betrayed by Stephen King. I had remained a loyal horror fan, but King had the nerve to expand his self into mysteries and fantasy which encouraged me, honestly, to continue seeking out new authors. So it was really not a bad thing for either of us. And this also kind of coincided with my attending the University of Kentucky and getting my bachelor's in arts in English, where I was exposed to a lot of the classics and all kinds of other writers and kind of put an almost endless parade of writers from the past and the present onto my literary radar. And then, for better or worse, as I began to understand literature and even the creative process better myself, a certain level of kind of pretentiousness found its way into my personality and my literary tastes from that point as well. The Stand, finding my way back to it. It was kind of during that period when I was in my pretentious period, as a college student and rather knowledgeable, I must say, that the Stand found a new life. It was adapted for network TV as a miniseries. Uh, However, like a lot of King's stuff that has been adapted throughout history, the miniseries was nowhere near as good as its source material, though. And I watched it with my friends at the time, and I enjoyed it, though. And as a King fan, I recognized the elements of Kingness, that were shining, so to speak, through even in this version. And I made kind of a silent vow that I must go back and finally read that book. It would still be another 3 years before I finally did it, though. One of my really good friends in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, had a new edition of the book at that time, which was expanded, even more pages, sitting on his shelf. I saw it sitting there, and I asked if he'd mind if I read it, and I ended up taking it with me to work at my job that I had as a car salesman at the time for every day for the next week. And every time I picked it up, I could not put it down. I had to literally force myself to put it down just to allow focus to stay on things like, doing my job. Still, though, I got through that very long book in about a week, diving back in every chance I got and loving every page. From the second I finished it, I completely understood the passion with which so many of my friends had insisted that I must read The Stand. And rightfully, it took its place among my favorite Stephen King novels. Probably no surprise to you if you've ever read it. After that, I was among the chorus of voices insisting to others, particularly if they were fans of King, of horror, or post-apocalyptic wasteland stories that has kind of become its own genre, that they must read The Stand. And I've done the same thing to a lot of people who are currently fans of The Walking Dead. I've been a big fan of Robert Kirkman's The Walking Dead. I got into it like on issue 3 of the comic, and then real quickly bought the first couple issues and made some money on those books, quite honestly. But as that series developed, one of the things that crossed my mind over and over again was that although I'd never seen or heard Kirkman ever say this, I kept thinking The Walking Dead is basically Kirkman's tribute, his homage to The Stand. The two have so much in common. If you're a fan of either, or especially if you're a fan of both of them, take a few minutes sometime and start kind of examining the structure of both, how they move, etc., how the villains are presented. The Walking Dead definitely at least moves in the shadow of The Stand. As a comics collector, it immediately exploded onto my radar when Marvel announced that they were going to be doing their own adaptation of the book. And when I saw the team in charge, Mike Perkins on the art in particular, and Robert Segura Acasa on the words, I knew that I was going to love it. Every issue that came out was a dream for me. Amazing covers, a clearly, truly loving, inspired adaptation from everyone involved. The passion and the dedication from this team just gushed from cover to cover of every issue. Uh, for 31 issues in 2008 to 2012. And think about that. In this day and age, having the same team on a book for a year is a feat. And this was 4 years. This was 31 stellar issues. A completely amazing feat on every level, in my opinion. So the plot of The Stand, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the plot of The Stand. If you don't know, go look out your window and imagine with all of this coronavirus pandemic that's going on right now, about 100 times worse. Imagine about a 90% infection and mortality rate, everybody dying. Imagine almost everyone in the country, almost everyone in the world dying over a period of just a few short weeks. That's the story. And like I said, it's this huge, long novel. Brilliantly, Marvel decided to break this massive novel down. Roberto Seguire Acasa broke it down into 6 5-issue arcs. And the last arc actually contained an extra issue, a 6th issue. The first arc they called Captain Trips, because that's the kind of the name of the disease, the way that the common people referred to the disease. So it sets up the whole story. Then you have American Nightmares, which is kind of just giving you the story of the infection from all over the country, from these different characters' perspectives, wherever they're located, good or bad guys all over the country. The third arc is called Soul Survivors. And they played with language there, and they spelled soul, S-O-U-L, Soul Survivors. And this is where you start really getting to know some of the even though they present the bad characters and Randall Flagg and so forth, it focuses much more on kind of our good guy characters. But then the next arc is called Hard Cases. And just like the previous arc had focused mostly on the good guys, Hard Cases kind of zeroes in on Randall Flagg and Lloyd Henride and some of these bad guys, the Trash Can Man, and gives us a deeper look at them. Then we have No Man's Land, which is kind of the story of it. No Man's Land is fitting in a couple of ways, but a lot of that story is about getting to kind of a confrontation, the No Man's Land between these two warring factions. And then the last arc is called The Night Has Come. And again, that's got more than one kind of meaning with it as well. But it was brilliant the way they broke this down. I think doing the adaptation this way supported the excellence of this end product in a huge way. It kept the story and the storylines focused, and it allowed this to remain a comic book. So there are several great climaxes and twists, and it allowed the creative team to keep a stunning piece of graphic literary artwork coming out regularly, which is, as I said, in itself is a major feat. Guys, let me take a minute and tell you about my favorite comic store in LA right now. They're called Galaxy of Comics. They're located at 17306 Saticoy in Van Nuys. They are their website is galaxyofcomics.com. That's GALAXYOFCOMICS.com. And I should have had a banner for this, but I will next time. Find them on Facebook, find them at their website, or call them 818-578-8559. Again, that's 818-578-8559. Galaxy of Comics has stayed very active on Facebook, letting people know what they have available, different runs of a variety of series, trade paperbacks, original graphic novels, coloring books, and toys, and more. And they've, throughout the pandemic, they've made arrangements to get stuff into their customers' hands as quickly and as easy as possible. And as I was saying earlier, now Warren and these guys have really set up the store. They've gone out of their way to kind of redesign the store to support this post-pandemic world and get people back in there browsing. So go visit Galaxy of Comics in Van Nuys and follow them on Facebook. And if you do, please tell them that Bobby Smith and Comic Book Corner sent you there. Thank you. I appreciate it, and so do they. Let's get back to The Stand. All right. So, of course, let's take a look at the creative team. Of course, it's based on the novel by Stephen King. Let's open this up. I'll show you. And the script is by Roberto Seguirre Acosta. The art is by Mike Perkins. The color art is by Laura Martin. The lettering is by VC's Russ Wooten and Chris Eliopoulos. And the covers are by Lee Bermejo, Mike Perkins, and Tom Coker. We'll take a second and look at those covers. Let's do that right now. Let me show you. This is one of the cool things about having this this Omnibus 2-book set is the companion book gives you the ability to take a really good look at the covers. So let's do that. This is the companion book. This is the first variant cover by Mike Perkins and Laura Martin. You might recognize that behind me. This is for Captain Trips number 2. And then Captain Trips number 3. And again, if you look behind me, it's this big gatefold cover that I'll get out in just a minute and show you that whole gatefold. All right, give me 1 second. So that was Captain Trips number 3. Here's number 4. Here's number 5. Here is Captain Trips number 1. This is the standard cover from Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. Here is just the pencils. Here is the cover for Captain Trips number 2. This is, again, the standard cover. All the other covers I showed you before were from Mike Perkins, and they were the variant covers. And they joined together to form a big gatefold that I'll show you in a minute. Here is Captain Trips number 3. Captain Trips number 4. And again, all of these are by Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. I love this one, Captain Trips number 6. Here's just the artwork by Bermejo. Here is the cover for American Nightmares number 1 by Mike Perkins and Laura Martin. American Nightmares #1 variant cover by Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. Love that one. Spooky. American Nightmares #1 Lincoln Tunnel variant cover by David Finch. Sorry, the color key messes with this a little bit, but I still want to show you guys. And this is American Nightmares #2, the standard cover by Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. That's Trash Can Man. Here's the variant cover for American Nightmares #2, and that's by Mike Perkins and Laura Martin. Awesome. Here is the variant cover for American Nightmares #3 by Mike Perkins and Laura Martin. Here is the cover for American Nightmares #3, the standard cover by Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. Here is American Nightmares #4 by Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. American Nightmares #4, cover by Mike Perkins and Laura Martin. And then American Nightmares #5, variant cover by Mike Perkins and Laura Martin. Now we have American Nightmares #5, standard cover by Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. This one's cool. It's a really good picture of Nick. Here is, now we're getting to Soul Survivors. Soul Survivors #1 by Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. Soul Survivors #1 variant cover by Mike Perkins. Soul Survivors #2 standard cover by Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. Soul Survivors #2 variant cover by Mike Perkins and Laura Martin. Soul Survivors #3 cover by Lee Bermejo and Laura. I love that one too. Here is Soul Survivors #3 variant cover by Mike Perkins and Laura Martin. Here is Soul Survivors #4 cover by Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. Here is Soul Survivors #4 variant cover by Mike Perkins and Laura Martin. All the weasels coming after her. And then here are Soul Survivors #5 standard cover by Lee Bermejo and Laura Martin. Soul Survivors #5 variant cover by Mike Perkins and Laura Martin. Hard Cases #1 cover by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. I love these Tom Coker covers. I really, really love Tom Coker's art. Here is Hard Cases number 2 by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. Hard Cases number 3, cover by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. Hard Cases number 4, cover by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. Great picture of Harold Lauder. And the worms ate into his brain. And then here is Hard Cases number 5 by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. Here is No Man's Land number 1 by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. Number 2 for No Man's Land by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. Number 3 for No Man's Land by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. Number 4 for No Man's Land by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. Number 5 for No Man's Land by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. Great picture. And then Night Has Come, number 1 by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. One of my favorite pictures of Randall Flagg ever. The Night Has Come, number 2 by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. Night Has Come, number 3 by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. The Night Has Come, number 4 by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. The Night Has Come, number 5 by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. And The Night Has Come, number 6 by Tom Coker and Laura Martin. And then there's still just a lot more. There's sketchbook in here. There's interviews with these guys and stuff. This is a really, really neat little package. Thank you for your patience on going through those covers. I thought you might enjoy that, at least some of those. I know there's something in there for everybody. I know that. And I absolutely love all those covers. Let's continue talking about the creative team for just a second. Roberto Segura Acasa. The first time I heard of this guy was back in 2004. He was already a known playwright, but he was given the Fantastic Four. It was kind of a controversial move, and so it ended up moving to Marvel Knights, became an imprint called the Marvel Knights imprint, and the title of that book just ended up being called Four. The book focused more on like the dramatic interconnections of this family of explorers, you know, that the Richards family and Ben Grimm are, more than the strong like science fiction aspects for which the Fantastic Four have normally been associated. So like I said, there was a lot of controversy around it. And honestly, I really expected to hate Four when I heard about the book, but I ended up liking it a lot. And I collected it alongside the regular Fantastic Four book from just plain Marvel at the time that was written by Mark Waid. And I collected Four and Fantastic Four until both of them ended. And I never really heard any more about Roberto Sacasa Aguirre again until I saw the solicitations for The Stand. And since then, the guy has gone on to revamp Archie Comics entirely. And he's put out a few books from them that I really and truly love. One I really recommend is called Afterlife with Archie. It's kind of like the Archie gang from Archie Comics in a zombie story. and the other is called The Chilling Tales of Sabrina the Teenaged Witch. It's the art in both of these is wonderful, and Sagire Akasa wrote both. He has gone on to develop and write those characters for TV. He developed Riverdale and has and written episodes of Riverdale as the showrunner for the CW and the Chilling Tales of Sabrina for Netflix. And I really, really love both shows. I'm a big fan of Hedwig and the Angry Inch, and recently I saw the Hedwig episode of Riverdale and just absolutely loved it. So thank you, Roberto Segura Acasa, for your amazing work. But Mike Perkins is an artist that I had heard of back during like the early 2000s, but I liked it his art, but I'd never really been he had never really been on a book that I was a big fan of until the Ed Brubaker run of Captain America. And during his run on that book, I became enthralled by every page that he drew there for Captain America and was simply amazed issue after issue by the great storytelling and this cool kind of noir aspect that came to Cap and resonated from the gallons of dark ink that were spilled across those pages. And I cannot rave enough about the work on that book. But again, that is really a subject for another show. And that is a great subject, actually, the whole Ed Brubaker run on Captain America. Note, when I found out that Mike Perkins was going to be the artist on the stand, I was pumped. But I have to tell you, somehow he exceeded my expectations. And then throughout the series, he raised the bar again and cleared it again, time after time. Where I was in love with every page of his run on Cap, I would spend long periods of time just poring over individual panels and pictures in the stand throughout its run. So I'm not going to spend as much time as I did with the covers, but let me just show you a couple pictures from the stand really quick. Here's the pic of at the beginning when the family comes into the gas station and they all die. This picture from Mike Perkins is just horrifying. There it is. The dead mom and the dead baby there. Absolutely incredible and just horrifying, tragic. But then you have pages like this that get much lighter because we're still at the beginning, and Perkins is a master at both. That says we're meeting Larry, and he's still kind of floating on a cloud with his, life. Let me flip down through here a little bit. Here's a panel of an explosion that's beautiful. I could look at that for a while. He also drew the University of Kentucky, which is where I graduated from, and he got it right. Oh, there it is at the top. Let me show you. Right at the top of that page there. That's at the University of Kentucky. Look at this picture of Nick at the bottom of this page right here. That one picture right there. How cool is that? Here's a picture of Mother Abigail beating the weasels. Look at this picture of Mother Abigail and just look at the kindness as well as just the experience, the lifetime that you see in her face. Where is it? Just amazing stuff. I just accidentally skipped one. There was a picture that was really good of the madness of Harold Lauder. But let me show you this one of Nadine and with Randall Flagg in the background. So just unbelievable, right? So one more thing about Mike Perkins, and then I'll move on. But I want to show you this Gatefold cover really quickly. Try to do this without ripping this book apart. Look at this. That's one big picture. And that's what we chose for this background right here. All right. Had to get that book safely out of the way. Let's see. Those covers were simply amazing. Let's get my microphone back up here so you guys can hear me. There we go. So the Stand Omnibus, that whole package there, the good, the bad, and the ugly of this. I wanted to show it to you because, again, number one, it's relevant, the topic, with what we're going through right now. And it was kind of eerie to read it just on that level. But number two, it's amazing. And it's when you're looking for a good long read, these 31 issues are satisfying on so many levels. Isn't it awesome? Couldn't you tell how awesome that book was and how happy it makes me? It really is. And it's not just good. It's not just a good comic book. It's a great read and a beautiful package. All of that together. I got that back in 2013 when I graduated with my master's degree, and I'm glad that I did. I think I paid about $80 or $90 for it, because that brings me to the bad about this. It's almost impossible to find this omnibus now. It's out of print. So are the trade paperbacks. Oh, that's bad. So we have the good, the product itself, the bad, it's hard to find, and the ugly. Man, if you check the prices on these trades and on the omnibus, they ain't cheap. So I don't know what to tell you about getting your own copies of The Stand from Marvel unless you just want to read it on an iPad, a tablet, or something. Ouch. Not as good. My suggestion is to check with your local comic book stores and then try eBay. If everything else fails and you still really want to check this out, and especially if you want to get that edition, then I just say go to Amazon and bite the bullet and overpay for it. If you do that though, I highly recommend, like I said, going all the way and get the omnibus edition. It's so, so good. My opinion, in case you can't tell, again, it's probably obvious, but I loved The Stand. And whereas it may have taken me far too long to ever get around to reading that book in the first place, I can safely say that it has now earned its place among my favorite works of art. I've read the novel, seen the miniseries, and now I've read the whole series in this or I've read this whole series, 4 times all the way through. One, first time when it came out in individual issues, I bought it then. And then I lost that entire collection and bought the omnibus. So number two, I read it when I got the omnibus. Number three, I read it again about 2 years ago when I moved from San Diego up to LA. And then number four, I read it again the fourth time when the pandemic started. And that ended up being kind of, I started reading it before I knew I was going to do this show, but it ended up being something where I was like, okay, that's very appropriate for Comic Book Corner on every level. It's one of the best adaptations that I've ever experienced of any piece of art in any format, period. period. It's great work. It does great, amazing work at this very difficult job of breaking apart this impossible book so that each issue contains, like I said, a great story, keeping it in that comic book format while building the arc, each individual arc up, and also, building and supporting the overall story of the Stand. It's scary. The art is moody and panic inducing. The Mike Perkins artwork alone, honestly, is worth whatever you might pay for these books. Whether you like, love, or hate Stephen King or have ever even heard of The Stand, the Mike Perkins art alone is worth whatever you pay. So, in case you can't tell, The Stand is highly recommended. Highly recommended, especially if you are trapped somewhere, if you're under quarantine. We're going through a lot right now, guys, and hearing about people acting like this is the end of this pandemic. It's not. We're still in the first wave of what will likely be 2 to 3 waves. I don't say that to create a panic for you or to make you feel bad, but if you do get trapped inside and you want something to read, when you find out that what I'm telling you right now is the truth, The Stand can be your friend. All right, guys. Thank you. That has been Comic Book Corner for this week. I'll see you guys next week. Let me get this back up. I'll see you guys next week for my little talk with John McCrae during the question session. And John and I will chat. We'll talk about comics. We'll talk about the world in general right now, entertainment. And John said that he's going to draw. John McCrae is going to draw a little bit for us live while we talk. And I'm going to be giving away this exact book. I will be giving away on next week, on next Wednesday, to one of you who's watching. How? You got to watch to find out. So I'll see you next week on Comic Book Corner. I'll see you on the other Cabin Fever radio shows. Until then, you guys, stay strong, stay healthy, and spread love. See you in the corner next week.